The cafe smelled of roasted coffee and quiet chatter, the soft hum of conversations blending with the clinking of cups. Lila Morgan sat at the corner table, stirring her latte absent-mindedly, her mind elsewhere. Across from her, Sophie Lane, her best friend since childhood, smiled warmly, but Lila didn't feel it. 4 years, Sophie had been her rock, her confidant, the one person Lila could trust with anything. Her dreams, her secrets, her heart. Until recently. Sophie leaned forward, voice gentle. Lila, are you sure you want to confront him today? Maybe it's better to wait. Lila's hands tightened around her cup. No. I can't wait anymore. He deserves to know the truth. And so do I. Sophie nodded, too smoothly, her smile slightly too perfect. Hours earlier, Lila had discovered the betrayal. Hidden messages between her boyfriend, Ryan Cole, and Sophie. For months, while Lila poured her heart into their relationship, Sophie had subtly sabotaged it. Sending misleading texts, planting doubts, and steering Ryan's attention away from Lila toward herself. Her chest tightened as she reread the final message. He's falling for me, and she'll never see it coming. S. The S was unmistakable. Sophie. Her best friend. When Ryan arrived, oblivious to the storm brewing inside Lila, she confronted him. Ryan, why? He blinked, confused. Why what? Why didn't you trust me? Why did you let her, Sophie, manipulate everything? Ryan's face fell, guilt flashing across his features. Lila. I didn't realize. Of course you didn't, she cut him off, voice trembling but firm. Because you trusted her more than me. That night, Lila sat alone in her apartment, the city lights flickering outside her window. Pain and anger churned inside her, but beneath it all, a spark ignited. I trusted the wrong person. I gave my heart to the wrong people. Her phone buzzed, a notification from a mysterious app she had downloaded weeks ago, promising opportunities for a new beginning. Normally, she would have ignored it, but tonight, she felt different. Sometimes, the world gives you a second chance, if you're brave enough to take it. Lila stared at the glowing screen, determination replacing heartbreak. She had been betrayed, yes, but betrayal was only the beginning. I'll return smarter, stronger. And no one will underestimate me again. And somewhere in the shadows of the city, someone watched. A tall, enigmatic man whose interests were piqued by the quiet strength he sensed in her. The game had only just begun. The city streets buzzed with life, but Lila Morgan felt a strange emptiness as she walked past cafes and boutiques, headphones drowning out the chatter around her. After confronting Ryan and uncovering Sophie's betrayal, she had made a decision. Distance herself from everything familiar, even the people she once trusted most. For the first time in years, she was entirely on her own. Lila rented a small apartment downtown, simple but bright, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the bustling city. She decorated it sparingly, plants by the windowsill, a few framed photographs of her travels, but left plenty of empty space. The emptiness wasn't sad. It was intentional. A blank canvas, she thought, and I'm the one holding the brush. She enrolled in a creative writing workshop, something she had always wanted but had never pursued because she was too busy trying to maintain relationships that didn't value her. Her instructor, a lively woman in her 40s named Ms. Chen, noticed Lila's quiet intensity. You have a unique voice, Ms. Chen said one afternoon, glancing at Lila's manuscript. Most people write to please others. You write to be heard. Lila smiled faintly, feeling a flicker of pride she hadn't felt in months. For the first time, her achievements were hers alone, untouched, untainted by betrayal. Meanwhile, in the evenings, she explored the city's hidden corners. Quaint bookstores, rooftop gardens, and shadowed alleyways adorned with glowing murals. It was during one of these evening walks that she first noticed him. A man sitting on the steps of a small art gallery, sketchbook in hand, eyes scanning the city lights as if searching for inspiration. Something about him drew her gaze. Tall, mysterious, with an intensity that seemed to pierce through the crowd. He caught her looking, and instead of turning away, he smiled faintly, just enough to intrigue her without revealing too much. Who is he? She wondered, heart skipping slightly. The mysterious stranger became a fixture in her thoughts, a quiet magnet pulling her attention as she rebuilt her life. She didn't know his name or why he intrigued her, but she sensed a connection, a potential ally, or perhaps something more. Back at Sophie's apartment, Life continued without Lila. Sophie texted Ryan frequently, flaunting her closeness and subtle victories. But Ryan seemed uneasy, glancing at his phone more often than before. He didn't know it yet, but Lila's absence was changing the game. One evening, as Lila returned to her apartment, a small envelope slipped under her door caught her attention. She picked it up. No name, just a sleek black card inside with gold lettering. For someone ready to take control of her story. Meet me at the Crescent Lounge, 8 p.m. Her pulse quickened. The handwriting was elegant, deliberate, and untraceable. This is it, she thought. The chance to start over. And maybe to find someone who sees me for who I really am. That night, as the city lights shimmered below, Lila dressed carefully. Not for revenge, not for impressing anyone, but for herself. Confidence radiated from her with every step. She had been hurt, yes, but she was ready to face the world anew. And somewhere, watching the city unfold, the mysterious man from the gallery waited, intrigued by the woman who was finally beginning to reclaim her power. The Crescent Lounge shimmered with muted gold lights, casting a soft glow over the sleek modern interior. Lila Morgan stepped inside, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. She felt a mix of excitement and nerves, a feeling she hadn't experienced since before the betrayal. The lounge was bustling, but her eyes were immediately drawn to a shadowed corner. There he was, the mysterious man from the gallery, sitting casually with a glass of dark whiskey, sketchbook open on his lap. He looked up as she approached, and a faint smile curved his lips. "Lila Morgan," he said, his voice smooth and deliberate. "I was wondering if you'd come." She raised an eyebrow, surprised. "You know my name?" He tilted his head slightly, eyes unreadable. "Names are easy to find for those worth noticing." "I've been watching carefully." Lila's pulse quickened. "Watching?" She fought the instinct to be wary, replaced instead by curiosity. "Why am I here?" she asked, folding her arms, trying to project confidence she wasn't sure she fully felt. He gestured to the empty seat across from him. "To discuss a new chapter. Yours specifically. Opportunities, possibilities. Control. Sometimes, a person needs a guide, though I imagine you can handle more than most." Lila sat slowly, studying him. There was a dangerous elegance about him, like he understood power, strategy, and human nature in a way that made others tremble. Yet he exuded calm. "And what's in it for you?" she asked, wary. He leaned back, fingers steepled. "Let's just say I admire people who refuse to stay victims. I've seen what betrayal does to a person, and I have a knack for identifying potential." Lila's lips curved into a faint smile. "You make it sound like I'm being recruited for some secret mission." "Maybe you are," he said softly, with a hint of amusement. "Or maybe it's just the beginning of reclaiming what's rightfully yours." Their conversation continued, subtle yet charged with tension, as he outlined opportunities for her to expand her influence, personally and professionally, while staying under the radar of those who had wronged her. By the end of the evening, Lila felt a spark of something she hadn't in a long time. Empowerment. The man, whose name she still didn't know, had awakened in her a sense of control and possibility. As she stepped out of the lounge, the city lights reflected off the wet streets, sparkling like tiny stars. She felt lighter, stronger, and more determined than ever. "I trusted the wrong person before," she thought. "But now, I choose who I trust. And I choose myself first." Across the street, the mysterious man watched her disappear into the night, an unreadable expression on his face. He had seen something in her, a spark of fire, a capacity for strategy and resilience that intrigued him beyond measure. Somewhere deep down, both of them understood. Their paths were now intertwined, and the journey ahead would challenge every expectation, every alliance, and every heart. The next morning, Lila woke to the hum of city life outside her window, a reminder that the world kept moving, even when hearts were broken. Over breakfast, she scrolled through her messages, carefully avoiding any from Sophie or Ryan. She had built walls, strong ones, around her heart and her life, but the past still whispered. Her phone buzzed with a single message, unsigned. "Opportunities favor the prepared. Meet me tonight." Her pulse quickened. It was him, the mysterious man from the lounge. She didn't know his name yet, but she felt a magnetic pull she couldn't ignore. By afternoon, whispers at work began filtering through. Sophie, with her usual charm, had started subtly undermining Lila's reputation. A colleague mentioned that Sophie had concerns about Lila's reliability, planting seeds of doubt among mutual friends. It was subtle, insidious. Classic Sophie. Lila clenched her fists. She realized she couldn't be passive. Every ounce of her former vulnerability had to be replaced by strategy and precision. She thinks she can control the narrative. Not anymore. That evening, Lila arrived at a private, dimly lit rooftop terrace. This time she followed the directions from the mysterious man's latest message. He was already there, sketching the city skyline, his posture calm yet commanding. "Good evening," he greeted, not looking up from his sketch. "I trust you're ready to take the next step." Lila sat across from him. "I'm listening." He finally looked up, his dark eyes locking with hers. "Sophie will try to manipulate her way back into your life. She thrives on chaos and doubt. But you can anticipate her moves and turn them to your advantage." "And why are you helping me?" Lila asked, cautious. He smiled faintly. "I see potential in people who refuse to remain victims. You're clever, resourceful, and resilient. If you harness that, no one, especially someone like Sophie, can outmaneuver you." Lila felt a shiver of exhilaration. This wasn't just mentorship. It was a partnership. And perhaps something more complicated. "Then what's my first move?" she asked. "Observe. Wait. Let Sophie reveal her hand," he replied. "Then strike, subtly. Influence her allies without her noticing. Confidence is your greatest weapon, and timing, your deadliest." Over the next week, Lila began to notice Sophie's subtle tactics. Friendly gestures aimed at mutual friends, casual remarks designed to make Lila doubt her own decisions, even attempts to get Ryan to reconsider. But Lila no longer reacted with hurt or anger. Instead, she documented every move, analyzing, planning, and preparing her subtle counters. Sophie wanted control. She wanted me to react. She underestimated me. And she will again. That night, Lila returned to the rooftop terrace to meet the mysterious man again. The city stretched beneath them like a network of possibilities. "You're ready," he said simply. "Not just to survive her games, but to win. Remember this. Power doesn't scream. It whispers. And those who underestimate it fall first." Lila nodded, a quiet determination settling in her chest. The betrayal that had once left her broken was now fuel for strategy, empowerment, and revenge. "I will never be the victim again," she thought. And Sophie will learn that the best revenge isn't rage. It's being unstoppable. The city hummed with energy, but Lila Morgan moved through it with a new focus. Gone was the hesitant, heartbroken girl. In her place was a woman who calculated every step, measured every interaction, and planned every move. Sophie might have thought she still had the upper hand, but Lila had learned the art of quiet power. At work, Lila started small. A friendly word to colleagues who had been influenced by Sophie, a subtle demonstration of competence in meetings, and a carefully timed display of her talents. Nothing overt, nothing aggressive, but enough to plant seeds of doubt about Sophie's motives. By midweek, murmurs of admiration for Lila's ideas began circulating. Friends who had once unconsciously sided with Sophie now sought Lila's advice first, consulting her quietly before agreeing with a manipulative friend. Lila smiled quietly to herself. Influence, she realized, was not about confrontation. It was about control, gently and invisibly applied. That evening, she met the mysterious man, finally revealing his name. Ethan Blake. He stood by the rooftop terrace, wind tugging at his dark hair, a faint smile on his face as he watched the city lights flicker below. "You've started," he said, voice calm but approving. "I see it in the way people respond to you. Sophie won't notice yet, but the subtle shift is happening." Lila leaned against the railing, feeling the night air. "I thought revenge would feel satisfying, but it's not. It feels better to be in control. To decide my own path." Ethan's eyes softened slightly. "Exactly. Revenge is fleeting. Power, quiet, strategic, deliberate, lasts. And you have it in you." They talked late into the night, planning moves and countermoves, analyzing patterns, anticipating Sophie's next steps. Ethan's guidance was precise, almost surgical, yet he never undermined Lila's decisions. Instead, He empowered her to trust her instincts. The next day, Sophie made her first overt move, a casual conversation with Ryan, attempting to paint Lila as overreacting and unstable. Lila observed quietly from a distance, saying nothing, letting Ethan's lessons guide her response. By the end of the day, Sophie's influence had quietly diminished. Lila's calm confidence had spoken louder than any argument or confrontation could have. That night, Lila texted Ethan. "I think I understand now. Control isn't about stopping them, it's about making them irrelevant." His reply came almost instantly. "Exactly. And now, it's time to take it a step further. The real test is how you handle Sophie when she realizes she's losing." Lila smiled, feeling a thrill of anticipation. For the first time in months, she was not running from betrayal. She was orchestrating her future. The pieces were in place. Her confidence, her strategy, and her partnership with Ethan were all aligned. And when Sophie finally realized she had lost control, Lila would be ready. The office was unusually quiet that morning, but the tension was palpable. Sophie Lane entered with her usual practiced smile, unaware that her subtle manipulations were no longer invisible. She had noticed whispers among colleagues, the quiet deference given to Lila's ideas, and the growing admiration that seemed to orbit around her former best friend. Lila, seated at her desk, looked up calmly as Sophie approached. No fear, no hesitation, just a quiet, unshakable confidence that made Sophie pause. "Good morning, Sophie," Lila said, voice soft but deliberate. "I see you've been busy." Sophie blinked, momentarily disarmed. "Busy?" "Oh, the usual." Her tone was light, but Lila could sense the underlying tension. Sophie was testing her, already sensing that Lila had changed. "I've noticed your efforts to steer certain conversations," Lila continued, leaning slightly forward. "But I think transparency works better for everyone." Sophie's smile faltered. "Transparency? Are you trying to lecture me now?" "No lecture," Lila replied smoothly. "Just observation. I prefer honesty over manipulation. It saves a lot of trouble in the long run." Sophie's eyes narrowed slightly. She had underestimated Lila before, but now the balance had shifted. Later that evening, Lila met Ethan Blake at their usual rooftop terrace. The city lights reflected off the glass buildings, painting the night in gold and silver streaks. "You handled Sophie perfectly today," Ethan said, voice low, approving. "Notice how she tried to provoke a reaction? And you didn't give her one. That's control." Lila sipped her coffee, feeling a rush of satisfaction. "I realized something today. The less I react, the more power I have. Sophie wants me to be emotional, to falter. But I'm not going to give her that satisfaction." Ethan's dark eyes softened as he studied her. "You're learning fast. More than most would in months. You've gained patience, strategy, and composure. It's impressive." Lila felt a warmth she hadn't anticipated. Not just pride, but something deeper, an unspoken connection that lingered between them. Back at the office, Sophie's attempts became more desperate. She tried to manipulate a mutual client meeting, subtly undermining Lila's proposals, but the team now looked to Lila instinctively. Every word Lila spoke carried authority, every suggestion commanded respect. Sophie realized with growing panic that she no longer had the control she once took for granted. Her smiles became tighter, her gestures sharper, and the charm she wielded so easily now faltered. That night, Lila reflected on the events with Ethan. "She's going to escalate," Lila said quietly. "Sophie isn't going to back down easily." Ethan nodded. "No. But that's when your strength matters most. Observe, anticipate, and act strategically. You're no longer the one being manipulated, you're in control." Lila smiled faintly, feeling the thrill of empowerment pulse through her. For the first time, the betrayal didn't feel like a wound, it felt like a catalyst. "I won't just survive this. I will rise. And Sophie will see it happen." The city sprawled beneath them, glittering with opportunity and danger. And as Lila and Ethan stood side by side, the unspoken tension between mentorship, strategy, and a growing personal connection crackled quietly in the night air. The game had escalated, and neither friendship nor romance would remain untouched. The office hummed with energy, but tension thrummed louder beneath the polished surface. Sophie Lane had finally realized that Lila Morgan was no longer the quiet, trusting friend she could manipulate. Her subtle games were failing, and every attempt to regain control now risked exposing her desperation. Sophie approached the weekly team meeting with a practiced smile, but inside, she was calculating her next move. Today, she would try something bolder, undermining Lila directly in front of colleagues, hoping to provoke a reaction that would reveal weakness. "Lila," Sophie began, voice honeyed, "I noticed your proposal to the client. Interesting approach, but are you sure you've considered all possible risks? I wouldn't want any mistakes to reflect badly on the team." The room's attention subtly shifted, awaiting Lila's response. Every eye was on her, and Sophie's smirk was thinly veiled triumph. But Lila's calm, steady gaze cut through the tension. She leaned forward, voice measured and confident. "Thank you for your input, Sophie. I did analyze the risks. In fact, I've already accounted for several scenarios, including the ones you mentioned. I also prepared alternative strategies, which I'd be happy to present if anyone is interested." The murmurs of approval in the room were immediate. Colleagues exchanged impressed glances, and Sophie's composure faltered, just slightly, but enough. She's different now, Sophie thought, a flicker of fear crossing her features. This isn't the girl I used to control. Later that evening, Lila met Ethan Blake on the rooftop terrace. The city lights reflected in his dark eyes, and he had that same enigmatic smile, full of approval and something unspoken. "She tried to corner you today," Ethan observed. "And you handled it perfectly." Lila leaned against the railing, feeling the night air swirl around her. "I realized something. Her power only works when I react. If I remain calm, strategic, and confident, she has nothing to manipulate." Ethan nodded. "Exactly. And soon, she'll make a bigger move, desperate to regain control. That's when you'll have to strike. Not with anger but with precision." Lila's lips curved into a subtle, almost predatory smile. "I've been preparing for that. Every word, every interaction, every observation. It's all part of the plan. She won't even know what hit her." Ethan's gaze softened slightly, though his sharp edge remained. "You're learning fast. More than just surviving, this is growth, strategy, and empowerment. And I'll be here to guide you." There was an unspoken tension in the air, a quiet spark that neither mentioned but both felt. Partnership, trust, and perhaps something more, threading through their alliance like electricity in the night. The next morning, Lila executed her first subtle counterstrike. She redirected client communications through her carefully prepared channels, ensuring her strategies were recognized without overt confrontation. Sophie, unaware of the quiet shifts, found herself increasingly isolated. By the end of the week, whispers of Lila's competence had reached even Ryan Cole. Sophie's attempts to tarnish Lila's reputation were failing, and her frustration grew. "She's lost her control," Sophie seethed internally. "I need to escalate, or risk losing everything." Lila, meanwhile, felt a quiet thrill. Each move, each subtle victory, reaffirmed her strength. Betrayal had once left her powerless, but now, every step she took was hers to command. "I'm not just surviving anymore," she thought, gazing at the city skyline. "I'm taking everything back, and I won't stop until everyone who underestimated me knows exactly who I am." The game was intensifying, and the lines between friendship, rivalry, and attraction were growing ever more blurred. The air in the office was thick with tension. Lila Morgan had been quietly observing Sophie Lane for weeks, documenting every manipulation, every lie, every attempt to regain control. Now it was time to act. The weekly team meeting had been scheduled. A perfect stage. Sophie entered, radiant as always, unaware that the dynamics had shifted entirely. Her smile faltered slightly when she noticed the confident energy surrounding Lila. "Lila, I noticed you've taken over several client communications this week," Sophie began, voice light but sharp. "Are you sure you've considered all consequences? I wouldn't want any mistakes." Before Sophie could finish, Lila held up a folder. The gold lettering caught the light, drawing all eyes. "This folder contains all correspondence, manipulations, and misleading information that Sophie has intentionally planted over the past 3 months," Lila announced calmly. "I thought it was important for everyone here to see the facts before making decisions." Gasps echoed through the room. Lila opened the folder, showing carefully compiled emails, text messages, and documented instances where Sophie had interfered with projects and personal relationships. The evidence was irrefutable. Sophie's face paled. She tried to recover, her voice rising slightly. "Lila, you don't understand. These were minor." "Minor?" Lila cut her off smoothly. "Minor to you, perhaps. But the effects were significant. Misplaced trust, lost opportunities, and confusion. It's clear that your actions were intentional, and the team deserves transparency." The executives exchanged stunned looks. Whispers rippled through the room as Sophie's influence crumbled visibly. For the first time, she was on the defensive. Later that evening, Lila met Ethan Blake on the rooftop terrace, the city lights glittering below them like a river of stars. "You handled that perfectly," Ethan said, voice low and approving. "Subtle, precise, undeniable. You didn't attack her. You exposed her. That's strategy." Lila leaned against the railing, feeling the rush of triumph mixed with calm satisfaction. "I realized it's not about revenge. It's about reclaiming control, showing the truth, and letting consequences fall where they may." Ethan's gaze softened. "And you did it beautifully. Sophie won't recover her influence easily. And now, Ryan will see the truth as well." Indeed, in the aftermath, Ryan approached Lila privately, a mixture of guilt and awe in his eyes. "Lila, I had no idea," he admitted. "I was blind to everything. You don't need to justify yourself," Lila said firmly. "The past is over. What matters is what we do now, and who we choose to trust." That night, Lila returned home, heart light with the satisfaction of victory, yet aware that this was only the beginning. She had taken back control of her life, exposed betrayal, and finally positioned herself as someone no one could manipulate. Ethan's final words lingered in her mind as she stood by her window, gazing at the city skyline. "Power doesn't shout. It whispers. And now, everyone knows who's in control." Lila smiled faintly. The past had hurt, but it had also taught her strength, strategy, and resilience. Betrayal had been a catalyst, not a defeat. "I am no longer the girl who trusted blindly. I am unstoppable." The city lights below reflected her resolve. The game had shifted, and Lila Morgan was ready for whatever, or whoever, came next. The morning sunlight poured into Lila Morgan's apartment, warm and golden, casting long shadows across the minimalist furniture. For the first time in months, she felt at peace. Calm, confident, and entirely in control of her life. The betrayal of her best friend and the heartbreak with Ryan were no longer chains holding her back. They were lessons that had shaped her into someone stronger, sharper, and unstoppable. She sipped her coffee, letting the quiet hum of the city fill the room. The city that had once felt overwhelming now felt like a playground of opportunity. Lila smiled faintly, thinking back to the rooftop terrace and the mysterious man who had guided her through the storm. Ethan Blake. That evening, she met Ethan at their usual spot overlooking the city skyline. He was already there, leaning casually against the railing, the wind tousling his dark hair. When he saw her, a genuine smile crossed his face. "You're different," he said simply. "Stronger, sharper, more yourself than ever." Lila leaned on the railing beside him, gazing at the lights below. "It wasn't easy," she admitted. "But every challenge, every betrayal, it's all part of why I'm here now. I'm not the same girl who trusted blindly." Ethan's dark eyes softened, a rare warmth in their depths. "And that girl would have missed everything you've become. I'm glad she's gone." A silence fell between them, comfortable yet charged with unspoken tension. This was no longer just mentorship, it was partnership. Something deeper, quietly brewing between them. Over the next weeks, Lila focused on her own growth. She strengthened her professional reputation, expanded her creative projects, and reconnected with friends who genuinely supported her. She no longer sought validation from anyone. Her confidence came from within. Sophie, having been exposed and marginalized, slowly retreated, unable to regain her former influence. Ryan, humbled and regretful, approached cautiously, but Lila knew she didn't need him, or anyone else, to define her worth. She had her own life now, her own rules, and her own power. One night, as she returned to the rooftop terrace, Ethan greeted her with a small conspiratorial smile. "Ready for the next chapter?" he asked. Lila nodded, heart steady. "I've been ready for a long time." And this time, it's my story. My choices. My future. Ethan extended his hand, not as a guide this time, but as an equal partner. Lila took it, a silent acknowledgement that together, they could face whatever challenges the world threw at them. The city stretched endlessly below, glittering like a river of possibilities. For the first time, Lila Morgan felt limitless. She had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and manipulation, and emerged not just victorious, but empowered, confident, and unafraid. The past shaped me. The future is mine. And as she stood beside Ethan, watching the lights flicker and shimmer, Lila knew one undeniable truth. This was only the beginning. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.